Everything must come to an end at some point. But knowing that fact, why not make the most of what you have right now and make your time here glorious? Living in the moment is something that helps one stay in a clear and happy state of mind. A slightly warped version of this can apply to Ibuki, and he makes things very interesting. I really want to jump right into why, but I can't because first I gotta put my spoiler warning. Spoilers for the entirety of Season 2 of Beastars, so for manga readers, chapter 98 and on, you have been warned. So with that out of the way, after making 3 videos featuring Ibuki as part of them, but not as the whole focus, it's finally time for a standalone Ibuki video. With Season 2 coming out in the West and all, a lot of people are talking about him again, and I've been wanting to make a streamlined video talking about every aspect of him for the longest time now. Well, here we are! This is part 1 of 2 of a new video series I'm starting on this channel called The Acceptance Arc. This is going to be about how to move on from the past and learn how to march confidently towards the future with your head up high. I've learned and grown so much as a person throughout 2021, and since a big change is happening in my life at the end of this month, this video series is something that I'm really passionate about making. So without further ado, Ibuki! Ibuki is an example of the positive benefits of truly being able to live in the present, but also an example of the detriments of being unwilling to move on past those present moments yourself. While I wish Ibuki's story took a different direction towards the end of it, I feel that the overall outcome of it fits more in line with the writing style of that section of Beastars that Paru was trying to go for. These are all realistic individuals who have their own flaws, and unfortunately in real life, not everyone is able to overcome them, and it's really sad. But I'm jumping way too far ahead. Let's start at the beginning of Ibuki's life. In many ways, his backstory shares many parallels with Louis'. Louis was raised in a livestock market where he was seen as an item on a menu and not as a real person. He was branded with a tattoo of his product number as a permanent reminder of where he came from, which is something that he feels he can never move on from because it will always be there. Ibuki was sold into a hyperdrug market where his body was forcefully tattooed into materials that could be harvested for customers. He eventually escaped, and even though his tattoos will be part of him forever, he doesn't let that stop him from moving on from his past. Even though Ibuki was able to live in the moment a lot better than Louis could, he had another problem that again paralleled Louis, but in a different way. Ibuki, with nowhere to go, found a home with the Shishigumi, but the teachings of the old boss Tayama gave him a new struggle to face. Play the role of the King of Beast, he told Ibuki. Be a ferocious monster that everyone fears. Leave no room for anything else but instilling fear with a display of might. The thing is, though, that's playing a role, putting on a mask, and becoming someone that you're not. Ibuki was born a strong carnivorous lion, but he didn't want that fact to consume his entire personality and image. Sure, he was big and scary looking, and he did embrace that, but he also wanted to be friendly and gentle, and not just the former. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to overcome the role forcibly placed on him, and became someone he couldn't even recognize anymore. Louis, on the other hand, was born an herbivore, and they aren't generally seen as strong or as leaders. Louis was not going to let that stop him from being what he truly wanted to be, though. He constantly showed his valiant strength as a leader, and even though he didn't believe it himself that he was strong, everyone around him was able to see it as clear as day. Louis had the strength to go beyond his quote-unquote role that he was given at birth and be his true self. This is what Ibuki wanted, but unfortunately couldn't achieve. The reason why I mentioned these two parallels between Ibuki and Louis is because I feel that they are the foundations to why these two got along so well. Putting it directly, they had what each other lacked and what each other wanted. Louis had a dark past that he was unable to move on from, and Ibuki has one too, but he actually has the ability to move on from it. Ibuki was consumed and ruined by the role that lions have to play in the world and was unable to be himself. Louis, on the other hand, was able to go beyond the roles placed on him and be the real him, something that Ibuki only dreamed of being able to do. Their first meeting highlights that contrast perfectly. Louis' strength is already on public display for everyone to see, with news outlets constantly reporting how he's set to be the next Beastar and all. Ibuki has only ever been surrounded by the Shishigumi, who were also victims of not being able to escape the role of King of Beasts, so he never even knew it was possible for someone to be something outside of what they were born as. That is what I feel is the true reason Ibuki wanted to elect Louis as the new boss of the Shishigumi. He felt that if someone strong like Louis was leading them, someone who could break free of the chains that were binded onto them from birth, there was maybe a chance for him and the others to break free of the monsters they were forced to become. Although to Ibuki, this seemed almost too good to be true, and he did have his doubts, so to crush them, he gave Louis the ultimate test of forcing him to eat meat. This was a little too extreme, but I feel like the extremity of it was fueled by two things. The first thing was the fact that Ibuki has gone his whole life without seeing someone strong enough to defy the role given to them and their species at birth. Going 35 years without seeing that can really harden one's heart and make it near impossible to believe. The second thing though, which is just a theory of mine, was fueled by slight jealousy of Louis. Think about it, Ibuki has lost decades of his life playing the role of the King of Beasts, and when you're that far deep into something like that, you could develop a minor internal resentment for people who are able to climb their way out of it. Ibuki was jealous of Louis for overcoming something that he has struggled with for his whole life. Making Louis eat meat was Ibuki's subtle form of punishing Louis for going outside of his species in its most exaggerated form possible. But Louis actually did it. He ate meat, and that very moment cemented him in Ibuki's mind as someone truly special. This started Ibuki and Louis' new father-son-like relationship, and Ibuki believed that Louis was going to finally free him from the shackles of the King of Beasts. Louis didn't even realize Ibuki was thinking about any of this and just kept believing that Ibuki was just a savage beast. As time went on with Louis being the boss of the Shishigumi, he began to play the role of boss. Basically, he was doing things like eating meat and smoking because he thought it would make him seem tough. The other Shishigumi members didn't even notice that he was just trying to put on an act and that he was actually neglecting his true self. But Ibuki saw right through it, and it was exactly what he did not want for Louis.
From the standpoint of a deer, you carnivores make using your feral instincts easier than it seems. You take out their skin, and they're all the same.
That's pretty mean.
The boss is pretty much selling himself. It's admirable.
It's not like I approve of eating meat. But now that I'm stuck here, I need to adapt to the rules of this environment. That's all.
Ibuki wanted Louis to become the boss of the Shishigumi, to break everyone out from playing fake roles and bring out their true selves. But instead, Louis himself was just succumbing to the pressure that was instilled into the Shishigumi by Taiyama all those years ago, and just becoming someone who he's not. Ibuki was not going to stand for this. Louis was a ray of hope in his life, and he wanted to do anything he could for him to keep going, not as this character he was playing, but as Louis. As the deer who defied the role of his species and unintentionally inspires others around him to do the same. Ibuki was going to make sure that Louis was not going to fall into the same trap that he fell into all of those years ago.
Boss.
What, Ibuki? You should knock before entering here.
I was gonna go with the guys to buy some booze, but I came here because I was worried about you. Are you feeling okay? You look pale.
I'm okay. What do you want? Huh?
I had to go to the main street to get this. I've never bought something like this before. I was pretty nervous.
What's your deal? Are you trying to make a fool out of me? Those are vegetables.
I knew you would react this way. Why are you so damn stubborn? Quit neglecting your body. You're not only important to the Shishigumi, you've also got a chance of changing the chaos at the back alley market. You're no good to anyone dead. You know I can't bear to see my new boss breaking down because of me. I know this might sound strange, but when I see you, I feel my appetite for meat going away.
Where's my respect?
What? How can you be so—
Do you think you understand me? You lions don't know a damn thing about me.
This scene right here is what truly started the first half of Ibuki and Louis' journey together. They both had misunderstandings about each other, which kept them from truly getting close. But as we know, Ibuki was able to see and understand Louis for who he really was. Now all that's needed is for Louis to understand who Ibuki really is and stop pushing him away. Now for the next 30 chapters, Ibuki and Louis' relationship growth kind of takes a backseat, and we only see small subtle scenes where Ibuki is trying to reach out and care for Louis, but Louis just being stubborn and thinking that Ibuki is a savage lion who doesn't understand him. Something I like about Ibuki, not just during these 30 chapters, but his character as a whole, is how passionate he is for the people that he cares about. Even if those people judge and push him away, that doesn't matter to him because he sees the good in everyone. With Louis, even though it didn't quite seem like it, Ibuki's kindness was starting to get through to him. There was one thing that still bothered Louis though. He thought that Ibuki could never truly understand what it's like to deal with a troubled past. Now this goes all the way back to what we were talking about earlier with how Louis and Ibuki both have what each other lacked. Ibuki realized that Louis was able to act outside of his species and wanted to learn how to do that confidently from Louis. Louis wanted to know how to move on from his dark past, but he wasn't ready to open up to Ibuki about it because he didn't know that Ibuki went through something very similar to what he did. I feel like it's kind of a small reversal of roles here. For Ibuki to stop having doubts about Louis and let Louis into his life, Louis had to open up to Ibuki. Now for Louis to stop having doubts about Ibuki and let him into his life, Ibuki has to open up to Louis, and that's exactly what happens, and it hits him hard. Chapter 80. I've talked about this chapter like a million times now. Chapter 80, one of my favorite chapters in Beastars. This is where the Shishigumi take a trip to the hyperdrug market. This place is awful, like fucking terrible. Carnivores are sold here, most of the time against their will, and are disemboweled to create materials for different drugs. They do some fucked up shit.
Ready to remove the genitals?
Yeah, I think you get the point. When Louis visits here, he still tries to put on this tough guy act, but since Ibuki has been constantly trying to care for him and make sure that his act isn't doing anything harmful to him, he shields Louis from seeing cash. You know what? I'm not gonna finish that sentence. I don't want to get demonetized. Paru, what the fuck is this place? And what got you to wake up one day and think, man, today I want to write a scene where an alligator gets his dick chopped off? Anyway, Ibuki tries to be a fatherly figure to Louis during this, and even though Ibuki's kindness had been getting through to Louis bit by bit, it wasn't enough to break through Louis' stubbornness. In that moment, all the nice things that Ibuki did for Louis became in Louis' mind moments of Ibuki trying to break him down. Louis thought that the tough guy act was his only way to survive with the Shishigumi, and Ibuki trying to take down his act came across to him as Ibuki trying to make him vulnerable to being devoured one day. Louis snaps at Ibuki and says that he's lived a coddled life and that he'll never understand the suffering that Louis had to endure growing up. Louis did it. He finally revealed why he feels so indifferent to everyone around him. It's because he can't get over his past, and also that he believes that no one around him would be able to understand all the extremely painful emotions he feels looking back on it. Now that Ibuki knows this about Louis, he could finally truly open up to Louis.
Boss, please don't think about jumping off.
Why would I kill myself now?
I knew about how you spent your childhood, you know. It's a beautiful night outside. Makes you want to laugh, right? I got this tattoo when I was a kid. Imagine that. I'm who I am now, because I ran away from there. Alone. We're not so different.
God, this scene is so powerful because of just how much weight it holds to both characters involved. Ibuki had a rough past and felt a lot of pain from it just like Louis. But unlike Louis, he doesn't let it hold him down. He continues to push on forwards despite his awful childhood. Ibuki did it. He finally got through to Louis that he wasn't trying to break down his act so that he could devour him. He was doing all of this because he genuinely cared for Louis and wanted the best for him. Louis was taken aback that he isn't the only one suffering and that there are others out there in whom he could relate to and learn from. This is where their relationship develops to its peak, because from here on out, Louis finally dropped his act around Ibuki, and they were both able to see their genuine selves around each other, something they were never able to do with anyone else. This is it. This is the moment that Ibuki has been waiting for his whole life. Someone who would understand and accept him as his real self. Ibuki wanted this friendship with Louis to last forever, and if this friendship were to die out, then Ibuki was going to die with it. Ibuki had found his purpose in life, and he was now perfectly content with everything. He became dangerously content. But look, we're not there yet. You see, Ibuki's goal in life was to find true happiness. That's all he ever wanted. He was born to an assumingly neglectful family who sold him off when he was 12 years old to be marked up and disassembled. Then, when he escaped, he was told to play the role of a monster that everyone feared in order to survive. For his whole life, he was never truly able to be happy. But then Louis came in and changed all of that. Louis was the radiant light that shined so bright that it eliminated all the darkness shrouding Ibuki's mind. Before we get to the final part of Ibuki's story, we get to see a couple moments post Ibuki's backstory reveal between Louis and Ibuki where they're being happy in their genuine selves towards each other. They were both really happy. But the thing is, unlike Ibuki, Louis still had other things in his life that he needed to attend to, and with being the boss of the Shishigumi, he was not able to achieve all of it. The question is, what are those things? Well, when Ibuki showed Louis that he had a similar past to him, that changed not only Louis' view on Ibuki, but on everyone in his life. Louis always failed to see through other people's perspectives and understand other people's emotions, but Ibuki taught him how to do that. It began to dawn on Louis just how much he failed to understand all the people around him throughout his whole life. Once he realized that, he noticed just how many people he left behind when he became the boss of the Shishigumi. That then led him to realizing that there is too much that he left behind that he needs to get back to. He hadn't told Ibuki that the night of New Year's Eve, he was planning to leave the Shishigumi and return to his old life. The thing is, Ibuki had a feeling that something like this would happen. So it's vaguely explained later on in the story that felines have this sixth sense where they are able to sense when they are nearing close to their deaths. They don't know how it's going to happen, but they just get a feeling that it will. Around the morning of New Year's Eve, Ibuki had sensed that he was going to die that night. He thought of all the possibilities of how it could happen, but then it hit him. So many of his possible deaths could have involved losing Louis, and so he was prepared for the worst. Remember how I said that Ibuki finally found true happiness with Louis and was content with his life? Well, if that happiness were to end, then at least he experienced it and was ready to go out with it.
Free, I want you to bring only one bullet with you.
Why?
So you can shoot me. There's a small chance that I might lose myself and try to eat the boss. Of course, I hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, and I end up seeing the boss as just an ordinary deer, don't hesitate to shoot me. You can make that your top priority, while I focus on protecting the boss from everything else.
Huh, you don't say. This job gets harder every day working for a deer. I can't say I'm as ready as you are.
It's not so bad, preparing for the future ahead of us. We'll live bigger than we had ever dreamed of, with our boss on our side.
As night fell, Louis' want to go back to the people from his old life became stronger and stronger. He was worried about the danger that Legoshi was getting himself into. He realized that Legoshi needed his strength to continue going on. A couple hours before midnight, Ibuki and Louis decided to relax in the Shishigumi's car. This is where Ibuki, knowing that everything is most likely going to come to an end here, lets out everything to Louis. How grateful he is for coming into his life and changing his views on everything. Sadly, Louis lets out the news that he's going to leave the Shishigumi in order to save his friend Legoshi. Ibuki does panic at first and tries to convince Louis to stay, but after a certain point, he realized that this is what was best for Louis and that he had to let him do what he wanted to do. Louis saved Ibuki. He taught Ibuki that he could be whoever he wanted to be and not what the world wanted him to be. They were two genuine friends who taught each other very valuable lessons in life. Ibuki was no longer playing the role of the King of Beasts. He was now just Ibuki, and he was so happy. Louis gave him the gift of allowing him to be his true self, and that's all he ever wanted. Unfortunately, nothing lasts forever, and it's time for Louis to move on, and Ibuki decided to give him a send-off.
No more bluffing this time around. In the end, I'm just a lion from the Shishigumi. This is the only way he can break his ties with me. Boss, I said before that I was comfortable working with you. That was a lie. I was happy. Louis, you saved me. I've stopped the car. Now, if you don't shoot me, I'll eat you alive. Just point to the direction of my voice and shoot. Now!
I can't do it, Ibuki. I can't shoot you.
I see. In that case,
Ibuki! Ibuki!
And that's where Ibuki's story ends. You know how last video I said that things in Beastars aren't always the most direct because Paru wants to leave things up to interpretation? Well, the exact reason why Ibuki died is probably the thing that has the most varied interpretations of it in the entire series. There is so much to unpack with it, and I'm going to give my own interpretation on why he died and also the meaning of his death. Now, something I also want to do, which is something I failed to do and make more clear in the past, is also give my own thoughts on his death. With Toki, many people were confused with why she decided to kiss Gosha, and I was too. So I wanted to clarify the possible reason why she did that. Now, what I also failed to make clear in that video was my own thoughts on her death. I personally thought that what she did was so wrong, leaving her child and husband behind like that. Her husband was venomous, and he purposely wiped her down with disinfectant every time they kissed because he wanted to save her life so that she wouldn't die. But she took all that away from him and then decided to kiss him anyway. But I didn't really talk about that in the video when I really should have. With this part of the video here, I want to dissect my interpretation of why Ibuki chose to end his life, and then afterwards, I'm going to give my thoughts on his death. Don't worry, it's not going to be as harsh as what I just said about Toki, but I do have a message that I would like to share about Ibuki's death. Anyway, why did Ibuki decide to die once Louis decided to leave the Shishigumi? Well, here's my theory on it. I talked earlier in the video about how all Ibuki ever wanted in life was to find true happiness. Being with Louis granted him exactly that. He was satisfied with life with Louis being there. Since he achieved his goal in life, he didn't really see any point in living after it. He was either going to die before Louis did or die once Louis died, and he had decided that the moment that he and Louis became very close. Although this is only one half of the reason, Ibuki had always knew that in the case Louis decided to leave the Shishigumi, he was going to die because he already was satisfied in life and he would be dying with no regrets. But he still wants Louis to move forwards, and he felt that he could use his own death to help give Louis the strength to be able to move on and surpass any obstacle that comes his way in life. Paru has this theme at the end of the Murder Solution arc, where if a character wants to move forwards, they have to sacrifice something from their past in order to do that. Legoshi has to sacrifice his meat virginity and clean record if he wants to continue forth with pursuing his morals and take down Riz. For Louis to truly be able to move on from his harsh childhood, he has to sacrifice his leg that he was branded on. As for Ibuki and Louis to move on from their relationship, Ibuki felt that there was only one way. Ever since Ibuki first met Louis, he knew that Louis had a tendency to hold very tightly to the past and let it prohibit him from moving forwards. Ibuki realized that if Louis believes that leaving the Shishigumi is what's truly best for him, then he needed to give up something to be able to move forwards. Ibuki saw that the whole reason why Louis wanted to leave the Shishigumi in the first place is because he was still attached to someone from his old life. This made Ibuki realize that because of the kind of person Louis is with dealing with the past, Louis still having close ties with someone from the Shishigumi would hold him back from truly being able to move forwards with the new life that he wanted to pursue. Ibuki had already decided that he was going to die if Louis ever left, and so he wanted to use his death to help out Louis. If he were to die, then Louis would have nothing strongly chaining him to go back to the Shishigumi, and he could live his new life to the fullest without anything holding him back. This is why Ibuki faked the whole "I'm gonna devour you" scenario. If he flat out told Louis that he was going to die so Louis could move on, he knew that that wouldn't have had the same impact on Louis. Ibuki believed that Louis had to let go of him the hard way in order for the message of being able to move on from him sink in even harder. So that is why I believe Ibuki decided to take his own life. Now, what are my thoughts on Ibuki's death? Well, I believe that things should have gone differently. Just because you are satisfied and content with life doesn't mean that it has to end when that happiness goes away. I believe that Ibuki should have decided to live on, taking the things that Louis taught him and keeping them in mind as he moves towards a future without Louis. Life has so many unexpected twists and turns, and if you keep moving forwards and living on, you'll continue to find new meaning in life. Life has its ups, and it most certainly has its downs, but having both is what makes life so interesting. I know people say that nothing good lasts forever, but that could also be said about bad things too. If the present looks dark and you feel that it will be like that forever, don't give up. There is always a light at the end of the tunnel. Even if it seems like that tunnel stretches for more and more miles, just keep pushing through, and you'll find that exit eventually. That's something I had forgotten at the beginning of this year. I was in a dark place for months and months, and I thought I was never going to be able to get better. I thought that because I kept on falling down into those dark places throughout different times of my life, I was never going to get better. I was ready to give up. But thanks to the wonderful people in my life, I learned how to continue moving forwards and never give up. I am so happy now because even though that tunnel was very, very long, I kept on pushing through and I eventually did find a light, and that light was beautiful. I am aware that things won't always be amazing and there will be low times in the future to come, but they aren't going to last forever, and if I keep going forwards and never giving up, I know that eventually I'll find that light again. This whole meaning that I'm trying to explain is the prelude to the second part of the acceptance arc. The second part of this series will be examining many pieces of media and trying to form a message from them all about the importance of living on, moving forwards, and never giving up. Ibuki's story is now over, and it's so sad that it had to end like this. But by seeing how he and Louis influenced each other, we can learn so much about how to be our true selves and about how to move forward from a dark past. I wish it didn't end this way. Ibuki should have kept living on even without Louis because he could have still found purpose if he just kept on going on. But the thing is, not every story does have its happy ending. But even with that fact, the memories of Ibuki and all the wonderful things he did will live on in the heart of Louis. Ibuki, we'll miss you.
I got you some veggies, boss. You need to take care of your body. He's a young star, and he's also a herbivore. Why don't we try making him the new boss of the Shishigumi?
I don't want any lies getting in the way of our friendship, Ibuki, so you'd better be as determined as I am.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the voice actors who voiced in this video. You guys did absolutely amazing. Also, thank you to Joseph VS for being a great co-director and audio engineer as always. Also, I want to give a very special thanks to Aiden O'Flynn for making both orchestrated versions of Yasa Shuisei that you guys heard in this video. He is such a close friend of mine, and he makes amazing music, and his work deserves more attention. Please check out his channel and listen to some of his music. He is so talented. I wanted to thank my patrons for supporting me as always. You guys really help keep this channel going. Alright, plug time. Follow my Twitter and check out my Patreon for access to early content. Anyway, what's next? Well, my top priority is making part 2 of the acceptance arc, but I also want to make a Juno video too. We'll see which one comes first. I'm going off to college in about 2.5 weeks, and I want to get those 2 videos done before I go off. Also this month, I'm going to be a panelist at Furrydelphia, where my friend Koiter invited me to talk about Beastars on it. I might make a video on that, who knows? Anyway, see you guys for another video. It could be any of the ones I just mentioned very soon.